Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. We just want to do a quick sound check. Maybe some of you who have already found the chat can leave us a short confirmation that you can hear us well. Just to check that. Okay, sounds perfect. All good. Okay, then we're good to go. Welcome again to this webinar on driving growth with innovation and with a specific attention to innovation strategy. As some of you already know, we regularly organize these innovation webinars. This one on innovation strategy is a bit of an evergreen in our collection. We've done it before, it's been highly appreciated, so we thought, well, let's do a rerun of the webinar today with some updated statistics and insights.
Yep, okay. And welcome from me as well. And obviously we're talking about innovation this morning, and well, you know, not innovating is no longer an option for organizations that seek to stay relevant, and as such, it's a key element in your growth mix. Many organizations realize that, and it's very good to see you this morning, since obviously this is also a topic in your mind. And well, surely you can grow your business by just focusing on working harder and smarter and doing things better, or maybe acquiring growth through M&A. But you know, if you grow through innovation, and if you gear your organization up for growth through innovation, it's a sure sign of sustainable or a sustainable source of growth for future growth of your organization. In practice, we see two types of innovators. We see the organizations that want to innovate, and we see the organizations that need to innovate. If we look at active innovators, those are innovators that prioritize innovation to drive growth of their company. And you know, while they innovate in sort of an upcycle of their business, they may often sort of lack the urgency in their business to start innovating, because you know, everything's going well. So you know, why should we innovate? And the other type of innovators are the ones that need to innovate, and those are the ones that sort of take a sort of a risky approach to innovation, where they start innovating when they face a crisis, or when their business is actually being hit by a disruption. And they often face sort of the issue of, you know, resource scarcity and the lack of time, and really forces them to be really effective with their innovation efforts. And this really leaves innovation success up for grabs. And if you let it go down to the wire in that sense, it's a risky play, as we said, and we can stress enough the importance of having a good innovation strategy in place. So hence the topic of this webinar today. In our previous webinars, and those are available on our website for replay, we talked about the three main innovation challenges that any organization faces. The first one is the ideation challenge, where you obviously how you should spot and select and create the most promising innovations. The second one, about the validation challenge, is how to avoid unjust investments in bad ideas, or sometimes even hobby horses in the organization. And then there's the third one about the scale-up challenge, which I think in our opinion is one of the most difficult stages in the innovation journey, in which you turn on the growth engine on in your innovation endeavors. All of these challenges are well documented in our innovation playbook, which is available for download. And I think Rob will make it available now. And if you want to download it later on, or maybe some of our other resources, you can go to our website and get your hands on the other playbooks that we've published as well.
So then the question is, how do you effectively deal with these challenges? And well, the key to that is basically invest in your innovation capabilities. We'll come back to our innovation readiness benchmark a bit later on. But we've done quite some research. What we found out is that best-in-class innovators, they have a couple of sort of characteristics in common. First of all, and that's going to be the main topic for today, they have a well-defined innovation strategy and roadmap. Then secondly, they also manage their innovation portfolio professionally, which is, by the way, topic of our next webinar. Thirdly, they have really made sure that innovation is embedded in their organization And last but not least, they also are aware that you continuously need to develop innovation competencies, culture, and leadership. As said, today we're going to talk about innovation strategy. Just a short introduction. I think some of you have already met us before in these webinars or even live.
Nice to see you back, by the way.
Yeah, my name is Mark Dauma. I'm partner co-founder of RevelX. Matthijs, as always, sitting next to me, and you may have already seen Rob in the chat. Rob is not inside, but he's answering all the questions that pop up in the chat. So please feel free to drop your questions, and we'll try to get back on them during the webinar. Today's focus is going to be on three main topics. First of all, what is an innovation strategy? More about that later. How to develop one. And also, how do you build a portfolio of strategic or innovation projects? So those are going to be the three main topics. As said, if you have questions, drop them in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. And we like to keep these webinars interactive. So as Mark said, we'll keep an eye on the screen. We have a big screen in front of us, so we can look at your questions and comments and respond to them as they come in. And we'll also launch a couple of polls during the webinar, which we would like you to respond to, such that we can have a little bit of interaction in this session this morning. And speaking of polls, we have one lined up, and you'll see it coming up on the right of your screen. And just to get you warmed up, we would like to know from you guys: does your organization have a solid innovation strategy in place? And if you work as a consultant or an advisor to a company, just keep that organization in mind, or your main client in mind. So, does your organization have a solid innovation strategy in place? It didn't cross my mind. I'm afraid we don't. We sort of do, and actually we do. So we're getting some answers in. Sort of seems to be sort of the popular answer.
Some do not.
Yeah.
Luckily, nobody says "did not cross my mind," but that's maybe because you're participating in this webinar.
Exactly.
So that's at least that should have crossed your mind. And actually, two persons actually have one. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, but it's also a bit in line with our benchmark data, if I'm honest. So. Yeah. Let's have a look at that. Thanks for your responses.
Yep.
And as said, we have a couple of years ago already, we've launched an innovation readiness benchmark. It's an online tool. You can go to our website and assess your own innovation power in 7 innovation best practice areas. Strategy is one of them. At this point, I think we're past the 400 already. Rob is confirming that. So we're past the 400 mark. Coming up to the 500. So we have a lot of companies, large corporates, startups, and scale-ups in our database, and that has given us some great insight into where everybody stands in terms of innovation. And one of the insights shows that there is, when you talk about innovation strategy, there's still work to be done. Looking at the numbers, 48% of the companies does not have a clear understanding of the future innovations that can disrupt their industry. We, by the way, have a separate webinar on disruption as such. 51% of the participants thinks their innovation does not sufficiently invest in projects with a long-term horizon. That's also, I think, quite key. Often you see a lot of short-term focus. And on top of that, just over half of the participants does not have a well-defined innovation strategy, which I think is similar to what we just saw in the poll.
Yeah.
So work to be done. Now, you could say, why bother? And I'm aware of the fact that we're innovation strategy consultants. So, you can always argue that, we would advocate having an innovation strategy. That's true. But here again, the data does not lie. Because when we compare our data and we differentiate between what we call the companies with a low innovation performance versus a high innovation performance, and look at the extent to which they have a well-defined innovation strategy, it clearly shows that of the high performers on the right-hand side, 72% does have a well-defined innovation strategy, which is a mere 18%, 18%, for the companies with a low innovation performance. So if you want to find sort of proof or evidence that it sort of pays off to invest in an innovation strategy. This is what our data tells you.
Yeah, and and what we often see for organizations who don't have an innovation strategy is that there are, let's say, 5 main barriers for strategic innovation within organizations. Mark, you already mentioned short-term thinking. That's many organizations basically have their eyes set on short-term goals and do not prioritize innovation as such, as they feel that it's something that's more for the longer term. And the second barrier that we see is sort of lack of vision. Again, going back to our benchmark data, there are a lot of organizations who don't actually have a clear grasp of where their industry is heading and what might disrupt them in the future. And that also sort of leads to sort of a failure to prepare a proper response to that. So that lack of vision is something that we see a lot. And then there's sort of tunnel vision.
So they have vision, but it's like a tunnel vision. You mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that the point you're
exactly.
making?
Well, the third, indeed, the tunnel vision is really so organizations that are sort of fixated on, a dogma. What is the organization about? What is the industry about? And they sort of stay within the guardrails of that thinking, and that tunnel vision really sort of prevents them from looking beyond. And the fourth one really revolves around having a very operational focus. So we work with a lot of organizations who are sort of very operationally oriented, and they tend to prioritize operational excellence in that sense, which obviously on the short term is probably a good thing when you're an operational organization. But if you're too focused with sort of keeping the lights on, that's a strategy that might bite you in the back at some point. And then the last element is what we see is lack of ownership, and that's often the innovation strategy transcends the individual units or business units, and is more or less focused on Horizon 2 and 3, which are maybe the more long-term elements of your strategy. If no one owns that innovation strategy within your organization, the execution of innovation will be left to chance. So those are, from our practice, sort of the 5 barriers for strategic innovation, which we see, and we actually see them in small organizations as well as large organizations. So there's no real change or no real difference in that sense. Then let's turn it back to you again with a little poll, and we would like to see. So we just discussed those 5 barriers to having a good innovation strategy. So what barriers do you encounter in your organization? So just thinking about the organization you're in or you're working for currently. Is it short-term thinking? Is it a lack of vision? Is it operational focus? Is there a lack of ownership, or is your organization suffering from tunnel vision? Let's see where you guys are. Oh, it's operational focus is slightly has the upper hand. Short-term thinking. I think those basically go hand in hand oftentimes. So it's those are 2 elements which we see: lack of vision, lack of ownership. Okay, good. Let's turn to a basic definition of innovation strategy. So when we talk about innovation strategy, we see it's a key success factor in your innovation success, and it does differ to some extent of your sort of regular business strategy, although it should be linked. But we'll talk about that topic a little bit later on. So what does your innovation strategy basically represent? It's basically a strategy that defines how your organization or how innovation will contribute to the long-term relevance and success of your organization, and it sort of defines how your business will be shaped in the future. And in addition to sort of the content of how your organization or what your organization will do in the future, it also talks about how innovation will be realized within your organization, and then we talk about the innovation enablers. the innovation strategy really should reflect your vision on disruptive trends in the industry. So what will be your response as an organization in the future? So what role does innovation play in that response to disruption? And secondly, it should always support the strategic ambition of the organization. We oftentimes see that, when organizations have an innovation strategy, it's either very loosely or not at all linked to their business strategy or their strategic ambitions. But that's something that surely needs to be in place. But we'll come back to that in a couple of minutes.
Yeah. And then, we're one too far. What defines a good innovation strategy? By the way, we got one question earlier on in the poll, which was about how do you define or measure strong innovation performance? I think it was Ines. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Annemart it was. We have a couple of criteria for that. One is your time to market. The other one is the success in scaling up the innovation. Also the actual return on innovation. Do you make money with it? And there is a very simple one. Do you outperform your competitors in terms of innovation? Because in the end, innovation is all about staying relevant and outperforming your competitors. So in total, we have 5 criteria. By the way, you can take our benchmark on the website, and then you will come across them and be able to do the assessment for your own organization.
And also in our next webinar in portfolio management, we'll talk about a little bit more about how you can measure the performance of your innovation process. So that's the other aspect.
And then what defines a good innovation strategy? So what defines good? That's always a nice question. Apart from having a clear understanding, what it means to your organization, innovation, I think having an innovation strategy also helps you to focus on the future disruptions instead of only the short-term trends. It helps you to create a broader focus on the entire business model. We often see that innovation is very much product focused, where we would advocate that you always look at, the entire business model beyond features and products. It's also a good way of being able to communicate to the broader organization the importance of innovation. It guides the ideation process for sure. But when you talk about portfolio management, what innovations or what projects do you start or not? Well, if you have a well-defined innovation strategy with clear themes and criteria, then you can make that selection much more effectively. And ultimately, it's going to help you to manage your portfolio effectively. As Matthijs said, more about that in our next webinar. What is then the difference between an innovation versus a business strategy? Because I think, today most of the companies will have a business strategy or corporate strategy if you're a larger company. Let's look at a couple of the differences. First of all, business strategy, that's your overarching strategic ambition, whereas the innovation strategy is actually supportive to that, and also, in that sense, part of your overall strategy. So they can exist next to each other, but they should actually be linked to each other. Typically, your business strategy will have a 3 to 5 is already on kind of the long side. Normally we would say let's focus on a 3-year plan, especially in today's highly turbulent environment.
Volatile environment.
You can hardly predict what's going to happen next year, let alone 5 years from now. Whereas your innovation strategy should really look further into the future if you are serious about investing in longer term innovations as well. Thirdly, I think your business strategy really focuses on growth targets in terms of turnover profitability, which of course should also be the aim for your innovation projects. But innovation strategy has a bit more focus on the business model transformation that is needed. So in that sense, it's a bit more fundamental, if you like. Typically, a business strategy, defines the growth engines, actually the propositions that will deliver your growth. Whereas innovation strategy should actually be about the innovations that are going to deliver the future proposition. So it's a bit sort of preceding or the first stage of development of your future growth engines. And lastly, the business strategy is really translated in commercial and organizational action plans, where your innovation strategy leads you to a set of innovation projects or a roadmap, if you like, that you can manage accordingly. Well, that's sounds all quite complicated, but as we always say, be pragmatic, stay pragmatic. So when developing an innovation strategy, or any strategy for that matter, use a pragmatic approach. Don't lose yourself in lengthy strategic discussions and wordsmithing, lengthy documents. Create focus, and because after all, strategy is all about making choices.
Yeah.
And that brings us, I think, to the sort of the core of this webinar, which is our innovation strategy canvas, which hopefully can support you in creating that focus.
Yeah, exactly. So the RevelX innovation strategy canvas is something that we developed, I think, a couple of years ago. It actually goes sort of hand in hand with our widely appreciated growth strategy canvas, and this is a specific canvas that covers the innovation strategy in a pragmatic manner, as Mark just said. So it's not about producing huge amounts of paper. It's about having
one sheet of paper.
Exactly, having your innovation strategy on one A4 or maybe A0, depends on what size you want to print it. But it's a really powerful tool for developing your own innovation strategy. And we just want to cover. Actually, it's available for download now. So if you want to download it, just get your own copy of it. If we look at the innovation strategy canvas, it's basically built up in three parts. The first part revolves around sort of your external and internal context. So the external perspective of the innovation strategy canvas talks about, the disruptive trends in your industry, future customer needs that you have to cater to, all sorts of maybe also some of the larger mega trends that you have to take into account for your innovation strategy, and really underpins the drivers for disruption in your industry.
And that's a tricky one, as Lawrence asked in the chat. How can you look further into the future in today's disruptive environment? Yes, that is a challenge. Yeah. On the other hand, I think when you keep a constant eye on what's happening around you and are in contact with a lot of the partners in your ecosystem, there are a couple of overarching trends that will sort of remain, even though there is a lot going on in the energy, etc. Think about, for example, the whole development towards autonomous machines, equipment, artificial intelligence. So there were a couple of technological mega trends that I think will impact a lot of businesses. And so looking further into the future might even be a bit easier than looking into the net, what's going to happen this year. Because I think if you are well in tune with those disruptive trends and constantly have a debate about that, you will in the end find a couple of trends that you need to respond to.
Yeah, and I think also an interesting part of that question, as I read it, is how does a company adjust for that? Is that innovation really should be a core function of the organization, and if that's the case, then as an sort of automatic response, you're always looking for disruptive drivers within your business, and sort of build the agility within the business to adjust for those developments. So, okay, well, actually, that leads me to the sort of the bottom left part of the innovation strategy canvas, which talks about innovation readiness. And within innovation readiness, we really look at how is the innovation muscle within your organization developed, and you can use the innovation readiness benchmark, as Mark talked about before, to assess your own strengths and weaknesses in innovation. But here we'll also talk about organizational agility, the way the organization is forward-looking, how you're investing in future growth projects, and such like that. So so that's the left part of the canvas. So it talks about the external and the internal context. And then the middle part of the canvas talks about ambition level. So where do you want to be? So what kind of growth gap do you want to cover with your innovation strategy? What's the North Star, the BHAG, or whatever you call it within your organization? And what are the innovation themes that really that you can derive from that? So innovation themes really are sort of the the containers of business development where you want to adjust your business on. And then the right side of the canvas is all about making it happen. So we talked about innovation strategy as being a sort of a pragmatic process. The right side of the canvas talks about innovation enablers and innovation roadmaps. And the innovation enablers really revolves around the key enablers that your organization needs to strengthen your innovation performance. The innovation projects obviously are the ones that fuel your innovation agenda or your roadmap or your portfolio, if you will. So the innovation strategy canvas, it's Rob made it available for download. If you want to reference it later on, again, it's available on our website. And if you need any help, just let us know, drop us a line. That we're happy to support you.
So what we're going to do in the remainder of this webinar is zoom in a bit more on those different elements. Now that you have sort of the overview presented by Matthijs of the innovation strategy canvas, starting again with the forces of disruption. And yes, Laurens, I think it does really help to have a bit of a, like what you say, a technology scan or a technology radar that can help. I think first and foremost, it's important to also put that on the management agenda and have a regular debate about it in your management team and see where things are heading. And we work for companies that are in sort of different stages. I'm currently involved with TNO, which is, I think the famous Dutch Research Institute. Well, they're in the very low technology readiness levels, really looking into the deep future, if you like. Very topical with the recent, attacks on the Nord Stream gas line, and they're thinking about underwater warfare, etc.
Yeah.
So their technology is like really, really key. But I think it's always good to also look at the sort of the near or the midterm developments. Having said that,
or maybe if I can add to that, because I see some remarks about technology innovation. I think your example about TNO is really about TRL 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
We're at the same time we're doing
those are technology readiness levels.
Exactly. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. We're at the same time working for KLM, our Dutch pride airline, where we really look at technology innovation as in a sense of how can we solve real short to midterm problems in the aviation industry, where we look at the TRL 789. So basically, innovation or technology that has been proven within a business context already, but doesn't exist within the airline context as it is. So it really depends on sort of what type of innovation and what type of organization.
And it's all about understanding forces of disruption, which unfortunately, 50% of the companies that we have in our benchmark, 50% of them, they actually have a good view of what can disrupt them in the future. The other half does not. And 60% of the companies thinks that disruption is inevitable. So it's again important to have a close look at that. There are a couple of forces, if you like. You can have a look at industry characteristics. You can also look at the technology drivers in your that affect your business. And if you look at the industry characteristics, think about underutilized assets, lack of transparency, customer pains that you cannot solve effectively. When you look at technology, well, already mentioned IoT, artificial intelligence. There are many, the whole autonomous development, especially when you're into more the sort of the hardware side of things. And then, of course, we have the development of sustainable energy solutions that is now fundamentally reshaping the energy sector, but also the automotive industry and the heating and climate industry. So that's sort of an overarching trend impacting a lot of businesses. By the way, we have a dedicated webinar on disruption and disruptive innovation. You can look at our website, but Rob, I think, will also now make available. But it's available on the website.
Yeah.
Just as an example, looking at an industry that we've done quite some work in, which is the biking industry, and we see a number of trends, quite disruptive, that are combined impacting this industry quite heavily, which is urbanization, driving us, well, I shouldn't say driving us, it's basically, preventing us from driving into urban areas any longer. We have sustainability, but also digitalization. And these trends, they fundamentally reshape the way we live in and around and live and move around in urban areas. We already see that in Amsterdam and Utrecht with environmental zones, and that's impacting many different industries like car manufacturing, but also retailing, real estate, logistics. But each industry will be impacted differently. So we have the same trend, the three mentioned here, but they have a different impact on each of those industries.
Yeah, exactly. And if you remember when we talked about the innovation strategy canvas on the left side, there's a section about customer, the future customer needs. And if you take that trend of urbanization and two of our important customers, the Excel Group and SPIE, when we worked with Excel on strategic innovation, and we took that trend of urbanization, that really was translated into sort of the need for a bike sharing system where consumers want to use rather than own a bike, and where transportation really is part of a sort of a bigger mobility solution. And within SPIE, which is a large engineering company, urbanization really really means something different for their customers, because they mainly work for municipalities, and they have to prepare themselves, for becoming a smart city or a smart environment. And the use of technology there is really to prevent congestion and improve air quality and safety in cities. So the same trend applied to different industries, different type of companies, and different customer needs really plays out in different innovation scenarios. But really underpins that it's important to know what how a disruptive trend will impact your industry and how it will shape your future customer needs. And the second part of the growth strategy canvas that we talked about was we talked about innovation readiness. For many organizations, this has been a very efficient tool in assessing their innovation power. And like I said, it gives you good insight in the key areas that you need to develop as a business, and the areas in which you're already very good. And you can also actually do the innovation readiness assessment for your team or for your organization if you want to. We often do this with like management teams or innovation teams of maybe 5 to 10 people, and just to get everybody's responses into one. And I think there's a question about this from. And I think we'll answer that one later on. Sorry. So you can get your entire team into one overview if you want to. Well, if you move on to the middle part of the canvas, as I just discussed, we talked about the company's North Star or your ambitions, and especially in the area of innovation, we really like to stretch that innovation ambition into something that's an audacious aspirational statement on how innovation will transform the business model. It's a very powerful way of communicating what the organization wants to do with innovation on the short and long term. And it will ensure how your organization will be fit for the future. And it goes beyond statements like we're develop a better product, or we want to surprise our customers, which is obviously also important, but it's not going to cut it as an innovation strategy. And we cannot stretch or actually put too much focus on it, because it's really important in how your actually really stretch the thinking of your organization in terms of what innovation means for your organization and how you're going to challenge the status quo as a business.
And companies go about that differently, which I think also has to do with your own strategic vision. So let's say, for example, you're a bike manufacturer and you're operating in the context we talked about: sustainability, urbanization, digitalization. then making better bikes is probably important, but not enough. Because bikes will become a mobility solution, and yet that can still lead to different innovation ambitions. If you take Palm, for example, it's been this is all public knowledge. One of the leading bike and automotive players in the Netherlands. They are owner of Gazelle, Audi Volkswagen dealership, but also Green Wheels, and that gives them an excellent position to start working on fully integrated mobility solutions. On the other end, you have Axel, who says, well, they've recently acquired Philosophy, specialized in e-cargo bikes, or bakfietsen, as we call them in Dutch, as part of their innovation strategy around urban mobility, so more focusing on the transportation side of things. And then we have Shimano, I think well-known company, and they have taken the direction of servicing utility bikes and advising local municipalities on the role of the bike in the future mobility. So, I would say the same companies, but companies operating in the same value chain, choosing different innovation strategies. And, that's in the end, when you think about how to make that happen, we often say, well, avoid becoming a dodo. That's the. Yesterday I read in the newspaper there are only 2 fully preserved dodos found. The rest is sort of collected of individual bones. But
oh, really?
We all know that's the bird that became extinct many years ago, and we offer kind of a working format which is called the Disruptor Game, which basically is all about defining your own disruptor, so the business that's going to disrupt your own business. We did that at Van der Lande, leader in package handling systems, and they came up with a new system which is conveyor based, which is based on automated guided vehicles instead of conveyors. Quite fundamental. At BDR Tamiya, the disruptor eventually led to the climate at home proposition. We talked about it in other webinars earlier on. Which is really moving them away from a traditional OEM and into the space of offering climate solutions. Which means that you have to be very keen on, what are the innovation themes that are going to focus on. And that is in the end also going to help you with your portfolio management. There can be many themes, there can be a theme around servitization, sustainability, digitization. I work for one company where safety is one of the key themes, for example, because they're working with very heavy machinery, which is quite dangerous to work with. So for them, any innovation around safety is going to help them stay relevant in the future. At TNO, we talk a lot about cybersecurity at this point, which I think is a key theme for many companies. So be very keen on which themes you're going to focus on, because that will be the starting point for your innovation roadmap in the end.
Yeah, exactly. And for example, in the context of KLM, we are obviously working on applying technology to sort of alleviate manual labor, but also looking at the waste problem within the airline industry, for example. So really interesting themes. So once you've just want to make a step to the innovation roadmap. So once you've identified the themes that you want to work on or have to work on within your industry, you can start shaping your innovation roadmap. And the goal of shaping that roadmap is really to select the key projects that are needed to realize your ambition. So if you look at your growth plan, so what are the key projects that we need to carry out as an organization? And sort of a logical first step is to look at what's going on within your business and within your organization, and really try to assess which initiatives and which projects are contributing to those ambitions. And you will most likely find projects which are don't really fit with that strategic ambition or with the innovation ambition that you've defined. And you'll probably also find a lot of gaps within your within your portfolio of projects. What we see is that it's often a mix of the two. It's either themes that are not fully covered, or it's a lack of horizon 2 or 3 projects. So, sort of a lenience towards more short-term innovation projects, which means that within your building your innovation roadmap, there are basically 2 challenges. So create focus on the one hand, and filling the gaps on the other hand. And creating focus more, sounds a little bit more logical than, but it's often more difficult than it seems, because as you look at the current portfolio of projects within an organization, you're bound to have to kill some people's darlings, or hobby horses of people. And really, in our experience, the best way to go about this is to sort of create a set of defined criteria against which we are going to evaluate all of those innovation projects, and look at the added value that they have to the innovation process and the innovation ambition, as well as the growth goals that we've set for an organization. Unfortunately, still a lot of companies are actually don't really do that. If you look at the innovation readiness benchmark data, we see that only 33% of the companies in our benchmark is monitoring their innovation projects on well-defined metrics. So they don't have a filter or a lens through.
They do have a filter.
Yeah, you're right. Only 33% of the companies do have that filter and do apply those innovation metrics, whereas 67% doesn't. And again, if you look at that 33% of companies that do apply that filter, they also have a well-defined innovation strategy. So there's a clear link between having that strategy in place and building a good roadmap. Whereas of that 2/3 of the companies that don't apply those lenses and don't have that focus, again, 70% of those companies don't have a well-defined innovation strategy in place. So just to point out that there's a really clear relationship between managing that roadmap well and having a good project or a good strategy. Then when we talk about filling the gaps, it's you have to address those projects that or actually you have to address those areas which are not well populated with projects. And the good news is that now we've at least identified the gaps. So when you go through that entire portfolio of projects and relate them to your themes, and you see where the sort of the white spots are, at least you can do something about it. To close them, you can do several ideation sessions, obviously, within your organization, or you can use the disruptor game, as Mark talked about before. If so, building your own strategy against becoming a dodo. And well, in our experience, it's not enough to do this once. You should really do this regularly. You should keep looking at your innovation portfolio. And you should really sort of put in place a structured process of ideation that's aimed at creating a sort of a constant influx of ideas into the innovation funnel, which is ideally assessed in an early stage by a growth or an innovation board, or however you've organized that within your company. So when we move to the sort of the last part of the innovation strategy canvas, we talked about sort of the enabling factors of your innovation strategy, and those are really the sort of the internal factors of that you need to develop to build your or strengthen your innovation power. And we've clustered them in a number of key areas. We talk about the organization of innovation, or how is innovation organized within your.
You have a separate innovation function, for example.
You have a role, a function, a team, or maybe even an outside accelerator,
or a growth board, which is also normally highly recommended to implement.
Yeah, exactly. The other one is around portfolio management. So we just talked about creating focus and filling the gaps. And doing this constantly, and this really is a process of portfolio management. Then there's leadership and competences that you need to have in place, and then there's the innovation process that an organization runs sort of and that's something that we advocate as a core process within an organization to really drive growth through innovation in a structured and professional way. Again, the innovation readiness benchmark will give you insight in how your organization scores on each of these elements, and how they are developed. And obviously now you have to define how to do that. And there's a lot to be said about each of the enabler categories. And we cannot cover them in depth, but obviously we have those webinars available on our website, in which we talk about many of these elements. And as Mark's already introduced, we're going to talk about portfolio management next. I think it's the 17th of November, somewhere in that area. So keep an eye open for that one. So after that sort of lengthy section on the strategy strategy canvas, and especially talking about innovation enablers, if you think about your organization or the organization that you work for, can you share with us which enabler is least developed within your organization? So where do you think the most work has to be done within your organization? Again, we've launched a poll on the right side of your screen. With 5 options. The one is we should work on organization of innovation. We should work on portfolio management, either leadership and culture, innovation competence, or the 5th one, innovation process. So what do you think, if you look at your own organization or the organization you work for predominantly, which enabler is least developed? Well, if I look at these statistics, we should talk about organization of innovation next, rather than portfolio management.
We're going to talk about portfolio management, but maybe we will have another audience. I think in general, I think there was much more awareness these days that innovation doesn't come about itself. It's something, and that's might also well be the paradox of innovation. It isn't like sort of the magical brainwave that happens. It's something that you have to organize, that you have to go about in a structured manner. So you have to have a process in place as well. And I think if you think about how you organize it and the process that you're going to run, then eventually it's going to be like you've created the conditions for innovation to actually be approached in a structured manner, rather than wait for that magical moment, which is not always going to happen. So it's also a bit about hard work, structure, organization. It's kind of the blue side of things.
Well, it is, and again, we just briefly talked about our work for KLM, and for KLM, we really build an innovation operating model, which sends that clarity to the organization and how we're going about technology innovation specifically, but innovation in general as well. So it's it's a good thing to get that place.
And then coming back again, we've covered each of those building blocks of the canvas, which is again on the screen. So I think in the end, the challenge is to bring it all together on one page. And we had a question earlier on, not sure, I think it was Tanishka, who said, well, how do we convince people of the importance of innovation, knowing that 12%, only 12% of the project succeeds? Well, first of all, I think, having that outside view summarized in the canvas, and then, identifying your ambition, because in the end, it's all about staying relevant. And talking about success rate, well, if you want to beat that success rate, or that low success rate, if you like, if you have a clear strategy, if you have well-defined metrics, you'll probably be able to stop the projects that are not going to be successful in an earlier stage, before the point where you've invested a lot of money in it. One of my clients once developed an app. They spent around 150K in that, and then we concluded, when they asked us why is it not working, that there were a lot of apps out there in the market who were actually doing better. And that's a bit of a shame if you've invested 150K. The other question was about how do you go about when you're, I think that was Paula, how do you apply the canvas when your company consists of several divisions or companies? It kind of depends, of course, if let's say if those companies or divisions are very distinct, so they are operating in different markets. Then I would argue that you may need to do the exercise for each of the individual business units.
I would say.
When there are country organizations, for example, you could argue that it would make sense to do it on a corporate level, then have the cascading down into what are then going to be the projects typically run by the business units. What we also quite often see is that the corporate organization is a bit more is more focused on the more transformational projects. So typically they take care of the Horizon 2 and 3 projects because they are transcending all those businesses. They are sort of, I wouldn't say the big bets, but the bigger bets requiring more substantial investment, but also more executive attention. Whereas the businesses then more focus on the incremental innovations, Horizon 1. So I think depending a bit on the nature of the business, you either develop a canvas on top and then trickle it down into the individual businesses, or if they're really different, I would say, well, do it for each business individually.
You make an interesting point about the role of corporate or headquarters or group, sometimes it's called, is so the focus is different. And but ideally, when it comes down to sort of building innovation enablers, you sort of match them throughout the entire business. So have all of the business units innovate in a similar way with similar enablers, whereas the themes might be different and the portfolio in itself might be different. But there is at least make sure that there's some overlap to create also the opportunity to sort of each individual business unit benefiting from the others in terms of leverage.
Yeah, and as said, the themes may well be similar for the businesses. One of my clients is now, well, they operate, let's say, heavy machinery on the one hand, sort of moving machinery. I can't mention the name, and the other one, the other business is actually focused on power solutions, so mostly backup power type of stuff, really different.
Yeah.
Yet at the same time, the themes, sustainability, digitalization, safety, in their case, are basically the same for those two businesses.
Yeah.
So that creates focus. But then the projects we define behind that, or within those themes, they differ substantially between the businesses. So, but I hope that kind of answers your question. And then, once you have the canvas, it's also a great way to communicate your vision on like a one-page summary, which is, by the way, the same we do with our growth strategy canvas. So if you're interested, check that out on our site, because that is a bit of a similar setup, but then for your business strategy. And then the question is, what are the, how do you go about it? Well, in general, we would advocate an approach where you focus and create focus in what we call rapid innovation strategy development sessions. It doesn't really require a long-term process. There are a couple of success factors that we can identify. First of all, you have to be customer focused. One of the questions of Deniska was, how can you effectively get customer input for your innovation strategy if your business is a large corporate with many clients? Well, again, if those are very different types of businesses, then but the simple answer is always go out there and ask your client. I think that's one of the key things that we bring across to many of our clients is once you have an idea, don't spend too much time working on it internally, but reach out to your clients, do a first validation, and then take that into account when further developing the innovation.
Yeah, and I think the other thing also is that we're doing a lot of work for a larger consumer electronics company here in the Netherlands, but with a global reach. And there's already, and people don't realize it, but there's already a lot of knowledge available within the organization and a lot of data in the organization, which can tell you a lot about, how customer needs are developing. And the starting point of many of the innovation projects that we've done with this company is really to start building with what we call a customer or consumer insights playbook, where we go through the organization and start looking at what do we already know about the customer or the consumer, and how can we use that knowledge to build our innovation place going forward. So start there, and if you're not satisfied or you don't get the answers, just venture.
And also, with an eye to the time, there are a number of other things we just briefly mentioned. The second one, and maybe the most important one on this list, is challenging dominant myths and beliefs.
Yeah.
There are so many companies who are sort of stuck in their own myths and beliefs, if you like. This is how we've done things in the past. This is how it works within our industry. But I think that the key here is to really challenge the ones that are sort of hindering you from successful innovation. That requires, of course, bringing it an outside perspective. You think it's done like this in your industry, but look at the other industries where things are running differently. As said, organize high impact working sessions and not lengthy processes. Involve the right people, which are not necessarily senior leadership. I would argue the other way around. Bring in the new young people with a different view on things. Use data, of course, but also use a bit of your gut feel. Not everything can be predicted by data. As already said, focus on external validation. We do that a lot for our clients. It's always interesting what you learn, and focus then on your riskiest assumptions and make sure you have actionable outcomes. Yep. Because that if you want to be pragmatic, then in the end it's all about getting things done.
Yeah.
And getting things done is not producing big sheets of or big large amounts of paper.
Yeah, exactly. So talking about getting things done, we have a host of helpful resources to help you get things done. Somebody asked about the book that was present on the table. It's the book that I wrote together with our colleague Eric de Groot on corporate innovation, or the mindset that's required for innovation in a corporate environment. We mentioned the innovation readiness benchmark quite a few times. You can download our innovation playbooks, and we're actually publishing new ones every now and then. So currently we have the innovation playbook, we have the innovation strategy playbook. Very shortly we will launch a playbook around portfolio management, which is sort of in the final draft version. So hopefully we're going to publish that within the next couple of weeks. But all of that stuff is available on our website. So visit our growth warehouse for more tools and inspirations. And if you're looking for a little bit of one-on-one time, just book a free 30-minute consultation with us, and we're happy to.
Because I saw a couple of questions from Ines, who is clearly working or apparently working in the public sector. She has some questions around how can you run that. Ines, we're happy to have a chat with you. I don't think we have enough time left.
No.
12 seconds. So Rob is already. We need to go to sort of a closing of this session.
Yeah.
But do reach out to us, Ines.
So as we said, our next webinar will be on innovation portfolio management. It's on the 17th of November from 10 to 11, same time. You can register on screen today. And if not, we'll make sure that you get an email from us reminding you of that webinar coming up. So we look forward to seeing you there. And for now, I think we're going to close it off. We want to say thank you from Rob, Mark, and myself here in Amsterdam, and want to wish you good luck with your innovation endeavors and building your innovation strategy. And again, if you need any help, just reach out, and we're happy to support you.
Yeah, and thanks for all the kind remarks in the chat. I'm glad you appreciate it. See you next time.